Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples now. Actually, from here on, I only realised this morning, that all my examples are about deliberate vehicle fires that in the early sort of 2000 to 2005 were a particular issue in the UK. I don't know if it was an issue here. But we're working on one particular area in Nottingham City in the Midlands in England, and the youths there had developed an interesting game called car snooker. And what this would involve is basically following the game of snooker, where you start with a red, then you move on to the colours. You start with a yellow, green, brown, blue, and so on. They developed this in terms of car theft, in that they would go out for an evening and see if they could, first of all, steal a red car and then set it on fire, and then steal a yellow car and set it on fire, and see how far in an evening they could actually get through the whole set of colours before the evening was up. And in this particular area, there was a huge problem in this particular problem. So if you just look at this chart, what we've got here are some of the results from evaluation that we undertook. If you look at first of all, the year prior to intervention in the target area, which was a local authority social housing estate area of about 5,000 households, there was an 86% increase in the number of deliberate vehicle fires, so vehicle arsons in this area, which was much higher than elsewhere. We compared it to, we matched it with another social housing estate in Nottingham that looked as similar as we could get it, which was the comparison area, and in that area, in that year, it'd gone up by 40%. And in the reference area, which was the whole of Nottingham City, it had risen by 49%. So it was clearly an issue across the city, but it was particularly an issue in the area that we were looking at. The intervention involved a range of diversionary initiatives for targeting young people. They started various sports events, plus some more effort put into the enforcement side. And what they found was that, I mean, from their view, this is one that we looked at retrospectively, and from their view, this was an example of a failure, because on top of that 86% from the year before, it went up by another 34%. So from their perspective, it looked worse. What we had to say to them was, well, yes, it's got worse, but it's not as bad as we think it probably would have been had you not done this. Because if you look at your comparison area, it's gone up by another 40%, so it's gone up by less. Your area's gone up by less than that. And actually in the city as a whole, it's gone up by 60%. So it just gave an indication that, yes, that's one where you've got a rising problem, but you've perhaps curtailed some of the increase by some of the interventions that you've undertaken. Okay, next one was one particular project in Bristol that's taken from a programme evaluation of, we looked at 30 arson reduction projects across the country as part of Arson Control Forum's new projects initiative. And you probably can't see this particularly well, but the blue line that goes down was the target area. This is actually a good example of problem solving. The main thing that made the difference was that the police and the fire service realised that what was happening was young people were buying cars from car auctions and from dealerships for like £50 and for next to nothing, and running them around for a week and then setting them on fire and then buying another one because they were so cheap. It was just kind of fun. So what they did was that they worked with the dealerships and the auctions and basically put a ceiling of £200 so that no car would be sold below that particular level, and that led to a drop in the extent of vehicle arsons in the city that were going on. Now we've got three other lines here that you can see the pink line that goes up. That was our attempt at matching with a particular comparison area, which was Humberside, which is another fire brigade area. And then the two kind of dotted lines in the middle, one refers to a family group of fire and rescue services. So it was a group of 6 fire and rescue services that were similar in kind as a group. and then the other line refers to the results for England and Wales as a whole, so national figures. So what we've immediately got is a range of comparisons, and obviously how well your project is doing depends on what you're comparing it to. If we'd compared it to Humberside, then the pink line, it looks particularly good in Bristol. But if we compare it to the family group or England and Wales, it's still doing well, but not as well as those areas. So it just goes to show actually that depending on what type of area you choose, it'll affect the results that you get. So it's important to recognise that there are all kinds of problems associated with comparisons. One of the big issues is about comparing like for like. In our previous example, to what extent was Bristol similar to Humberside or to the family group or to the country as a whole? And also, it can be difficult to find areas sometimes, comparisons that are not subject to an intervention. And I'll come on to show an example of that in a second. Now, in that program evaluation that we undertook, we actually identified 4 different comparisons, essentially. The one that was missing on that last example was a target area, the rest of the fire brigade area, because the project itself was a fire brigade area. But when we presented the results back to the government department, we actually, depending on which comparison that you used, we found there was somewhere between a reduction of 1,000 compared to a reduction of 4,000. So basically we gave a range depending on the comparison that you used. Okay, just going to touch on attribution, because it's another one of those key issues around evaluation. Attribution particularly refers to the extent to which you can be certain that the thing that you're looking at is the thing that made the difference. And ideally, in terms of developing an evaluation design, you should be able to develop measures which allow you to make an assessment of whether attribution, whether the outcome that you observe is due to the particular intervention you're looking at. But important to recognise it's imprecise. You can never be absolutely sure because there are so many other factors in the real world that may be affecting the results. So you can only go so far in terms of determining that attribution. And the fact is the change may be due to something else. Now this just brings us on to another programme evaluation. The success of our evaluation of the Arson Control Forum's new projects initiative, in which we suggested that they should roll out a range of initiatives that were undertaken to tackle vehicle arson, led to another programme called the Implementation Fund, and we were subsequently invited to evaluate that. Now what we've got here is just comparing the blue line are the figures for combined target areas. Again, we looked at 30 projects, and we've got the combined results from those 30 projects, and we're just comparing those to the results for England. And these are figures in terms of vehicle arsons, essentially. And you can see that the dotted line is when the programme started, and following that, there's almost no difference, really, between what was happening in the areas that were funded to undertake these particular projects and the comparison areas, i.e. the rest of England. Now we think there are a number of reasons for that, the lack of finding. One was a problem with contamination, in that the comparison area, i.e. the rest of England that we were looking at, also picked up on this idea of having vehicle removal schemes and various interventions to tackle vehicle arson. So regardless of whether they were funded by the programme, different fire brigades decided to roll out these particular initiatives. So hence, there was actually very little difference between the intervention areas and the comparison areas in terms of their dosage of intervention, if you like. They were both similar. And the fact that actually there was a reduction at all, we suspect, actually this is in hindsight, that we think probably that reduction, if I can go back one, the reduction we see in there kind of gradually tailing off, could well have been nothing to do with all the money that was spent around vehicle removal schemes and arson reduction programs. It may have been just to do with commodity prices, actually, and there was a huge rise in commodity prices from the mid 2000s and has continued, and obviously Australia's benefiting from that at the moment. But as a result of that, the value of scrap metal changed. It moved from a position in the early 2000s where if you wanted to get rid of a car, you had to actually pay a scrapyard to take your car away. So as a result, instead of having it taken away, you just dumped your car if you had an old car and let the kids on the local estate play with it and then set it on fire. And that's kind of the process that was going on. Now, as time went on, commodity prices rose, scrap metal prices rose, and suddenly scrapyards were paying money to take your car because they could make a profit from it. So we think probably the main impact was the fact that there was no longer the targets, the fuel for vehicle arson, because people were actually cashing in on actually getting rid of their old cars instead of just getting money for them rather than just abandoning them. Okay, just to conclude then, I think what I draw to is the fact that evaluation is really more craft than science. We kind of wrap it up with lots of scientific terms, but actually in the real world, there's a whole series of issues that you need to overcome. And often you have to work with the data that's available unless you can introduce your own data collection processes. And what it should do is, as far as possible in terms of evaluation, is try and address as many weaknesses as possible and to produce as robust an evaluation as possible. But there will always be limitations. You can pretty much look at anybody's evaluation and shoot holes in it because there will always be problems there. But I think it's important is providing results that are sufficiently robust for decision making and that can actually withstand the rigor and critique of your peers in terms of the results. What I say is that's just the kind of research that I think AIC finds it's intellectually rewarding because it's something where you need to use a bit of problem solving in terms of coming up with the results. Okay. Thank you.